So I ran across a cache of documents from a particular individual who I knew and who has since passed on a very short time ago, in fact. And one of the things that they talked about I found kind of interesting, because we actually ended up, I often with this individual, I disagree with a lot of the things the individual has had to say. But in this particular case, one of the primary things that they brought up I felt was actually correct, and it is that people get sleep, that subject that we're going to talk on today, wrong, in that they tend to think that people getting too much sleep is harmful, and I'm not sure in a lot of senses that they think it is, at least that's true. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and talk on sleep on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Sunday, the 13th of February, 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page, on mindsminds.com, on Parler, on Gab, on, the various places that you might catch me these days. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody at the moment, but locals, it comes to mind. But welcome aboard. Hope you're having a good day today and everything's going well for you, as I make a habit of saying, because it's true. I do, in fact, hope that. And Rumble is my preferred platform, but I also wanted to say that the subject again for today is something that sounds awfully simple, but it's not nearly as simple as it sounds, and that's the subject of sleep. And I wanted to talk a little bit on a few things with regard to that, and I'll go ahead and go through my notes in order to give you some idea. Some of the things that came to mind when I started to look at this. I started by asking myself some questions. Is oversleep unhealthy? Is it healthy? If so, do its health benefits outweigh the time lost? Because you're going to lose time if you sleep excessively. How about sleeping too little? Between the two, I would be inclined to say, and this is the thing with which I agree, that I agree with that individual on, I'll put it that way. I would be inclined to say sleeping too little was the one that creates more problems. Besides likely hindering healing and making it so processes that would occur when one is out for the night or day, depending on when you sleep, as has been indicated by various folks, lapses in judgment as a result of not getting enough rest, as well as plain old falling out, something I have done, and I'm very lucky it didn't take my life, can literally be fatal. Even so, as with just about anything, I would make the argument that sleeping too much is harmful as well. That is, I think, where we would probably disagree, me and this other individual. Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. And they're past, so I can't really ask them at this point. I would agree there are probably few, if any, studies indicating that's true, that sleeping too much is a bad thing. The reality is, even if getting too much sleep were not harmful in terms of health benefits or lack thereof, one would have to argue for a point of diminishing returns. A person has only so many hours of life, even if he or she lives to a grand old age of 100 plus years, after all. That's just a reality. We're only going to get so many hours. So if sleeping one's life away weren't harmful for any other reason, it can rightly be argued that for that one ends up spending time sleeping when they should be doing, that too much sleep is harmful to one's health. I could certainly add to this the idea that the human body was made to move about. And when you fail to cause it to do so, things like muscular atrophy will occur. It's not a question, that's going to happen. Among those muscles is one that many fail to consider when thinking about such things, to wit, the heart. One of the things I think so many people fail to understand is that's why diet is not a sufficient tool to gain health without adding exercise to the mix. Simply stated, if you don't work to keep your heart and respiratory system healthy, chances are good you'll die the much sooner. Another interesting question is, are there nocturnal people? For my part, I've worked every hour known to man and every day of the year at one time or another. As a result, I've had to sleep whatever hours were available if I wanted to get sufficient rest to be able to work and maintain the lucidity needed to do so. Here's another interesting reality. It hasn't been so long that man has had regular, not too dangerous sources of light that made it possible to do things in the hours of darkness, which become even longer in the winter. So, the reality is, it largely wasn't even possible to accomplish the needed things in those hours. It just wasn't. This is why the idea of nocturnal humans is not a really meaningful one. Unlike certain other animals, our, quote, night vision, end of quote, does not tend to be passable, much less exceptional. Some people are better than others, I'll grant. This is part of the reason we humans tend to be, quote, diurnal. We tend to live in the daytime. Is sleep important? Sure. Can you get too much or too little? Definitely. Is there pretty good reason for us to be awake in the daytime for the most part? Assuredly. The reality of life is this. There are animals who are nocturnal. By the way, excuse my boy if you happen to hear him in the background. He managed to get up before I got my video done today. There are critters that are nocturnal. There's no doubt. There are bats, there are wombats, there are various koalas. I could go all day. Possums, raccoons tend to often be nocturnal in nature. Lots of the smaller rodents tend to be that way. There are lots of them. And they have good night vision, and they can do the things that they need and want to do in those nighttime hours without much of a problem in doing so. That doesn't work that way for humans. Okay? And that's why for mankind, it's important to realize that we tend to live in the daytime. We tend to be creatures of the day. A term I have to look up because I believe I'm using it correctly, diurnal, diurnal, however you want to say it, right? Creatures of the day, basically. Does that mean that no human can live at night? No, it doesn't mean that. Can be awake and so forth at night? No, it doesn't mean that. However, for the most part, if you do that, look, I can't get the stuff I want to get done now when I am up in the daytime because I happen to work during those daytime hours. I can't get certain of the stuff that I want to get done without having extra time off in order to do it. It's just not even possible for me. So, are we nocturnal? I would argue not as a general thing. And I would further argue, and by the way, this is something that's even more important when you consider that many of us have lived around the world where we had to sleep in different daytime hours and we just had to adjust those hours, right? I would argue that in general, humans can actually adjust to a given set of hours that they're working, sleeping, etc. Maybe there are some that are more optimal. You could make that argument. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's wrong. Again, though, I want also to make sure that you understand that this idea of not getting enough sleep, yeah, it's important. Yes, we need to consider it. Yes, it can cause serious problems. I have driven on lack of sleep, and I promise you that's not something I hope I will ever do again. It was not worth it. Even though I didn't get hurt or injured or anything else and didn't hurt or injure anyone else in the process, I literally found myself falling asleep behind the wheel with all the work that I was doing to try and make that not be the case. And I have to be careful about that these days, with even more sleep than when I was a young buck, and I did that way back when, going from southern Idaho to eastern Washington state, getting halfway in through the state to do it. These days I have to even be more careful than that. 300 miles is an awful strong trek to be taking, and I'm just here to tell you that's bad. But I want to say again, I think oversleep is every bit as bad in certain senses. It may not be damaging, it may not be harmful to you, though I think there are atrophy issues that you might suffer if you do that, but it takes time that you could and probably should be using for other things if you do it. Okay, I have run myself out of time. This is something I could probably talk on longer than I expected, to be honest with you. I thought that I might have a little bit of trouble coming up with content for this. Didn't have any at all, as you may be able to tell. But I need to go ahead and wrap things up. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I am your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Sunday, the 13th of February, 2022, that beginning of the Christian week. That means tomorrow will be Monday, the 14th of February of 2022, that beginning of the work week for a lot of folks, and what they refer to these days as Valentine's Day, St. Valentine's Day. I won't get into any more details on that. Some other folks will have some inside baseball on how that actually looks for me personally, but I'm not going to get into it. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page, on Minds.com, on Locals, Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com, on Gab, on Parler, and on any of the other platforms that you might have seen me on. Remember, Rumble is sort of my preferred platform. You can give me a boxing glove or a Rumble on Rumble. You can give me a plus sign or a minus sign there, which is a like or a dislike. On many other platforms, you can give me a like or dislike of one kind or another as well. You can also comment on my content if you choose to do so, and I will try to look at your comments, and if I feel it's appropriate, I will respond. Otherwise, if it's not advertisement or something that needs to be deleted, I will at least look at it and leave it there so that other people can see what you've had to say. Hope everything is going well for you today. Hope you're doing well and getting ready for this next, this upcoming work week. Again, the subject for today has been sleep, and tomorrow we're going to talk about something that sounds big-headed, but when I get into it, maybe you'll see that I'm not really quite so big-headed as you think I am, and it is, I'm better than others. I'm better than others. That's something that people need to consider and need to kind of cast into their mindset, I think, as a reasonable thing. Again, I hope you're doing well today and that things are going well for you, and hopefully we will see you again on Monday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was recorded on Sunday, February the 13th of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @KPSchubert. That's @KPSHUBERT. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.